It is New Year's Eve. I haven't posted my quota. I didn't post last week. It was just, last week was an interesting week. So I'm going to try to do this scripted because I have so much to say, and if I don't stick to a script, I'm gonna get fucked up. Because I tried to do some free flowing material. One, I don't have no skills as far as editing goes, and I don't enjoy it. I don't see the point of it. I really don't. Why we gotta do all these extra spectacular intros, outros, background music, fade out? Just get the information out there. Come on. So let's start. The process of intrusive negative thought. If you pick the first dandelion you see in your freshly planted sod while it is still yellow, you will not see any more dandelions in your yard. But if you wait until it germinates to remove it, you will still find dandelions later, and sometimes not for a long while. The process of intrusive negative thought is the same way. If you experience traumas within childhood that you never addressed, the mind creates a germinated dandelion. When you come to work on this years later, you're only working to pull the weeds that will continue to pop up. Think of each thought created in trauma as a fresh dandelion in the yard, but repressed trauma as a germinated dandelion. The sooner you process the trauma, the less likely you are to experience a negative thought process in the future. If you have just come into thinking in the now, but still have repressed trauma, you are struggling to stay on that vibration as a result of germinated dandelions in the yard that is your mind. Once your yard is affected by the germination, you need more than plucking. You need weed killer. Positive thinking is the act of plucking out a negative thought. However, investigating and diving deeper into why the thought process popped up in the first place is the weed killer. All of the books I have read on higher thinking encourage you not to do this. They acknowledge that these thoughts are what propel you to become a victim, perpetrator, or part of a hive-like thinking process. But they still do not acknowledge the germination of the thought process itself, and until that is done, you will still experience the thoughts that create your algorithm. Forcing yourself to rise above negative thoughts by forceful positivity is unnatural. If we attack the original germination, there simply wouldn't be any negative thoughts to address. I am open to learning. You can tell me something. However, because it is my responsibility to learn and obtain my own knowledge, I will always go my own way. Had I read the books I recently read a little sooner, and without curiosity, I would be just like you. Far more successful in terms of finances, glammed out, living the high life, but I would not have the weed killer, and every day I would still be working to eradicate the weeds of the mind like a chore. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I've mastered that yet. I haven't. But what I can tell you is based on what I see of you, you haven't either. So I'm not... It's okay. It's okay. It really is. I'm not trying to attack anyone by my message. I just need y'all to Hear me out. Covert incest was defined in the 1980s as an emotional abusive relationship between a parental figure and child that does not involve incest or sexual intercourse, though it involves similar interpersonal dynamics as a relationship between sexual partners. And what I'm reading right now, this is actually straight from Wikipedia. This is just where I chose to pull the information, but I have books that I keep suggesting to get more information on it. Defining such relationships as incest has led to criticism of the concept for dramatically loosening the definition of incest, making child abuse more prevalent than it actually is, and being overused and unsubstantiated. Covert incest is described as occurring when a parent is unable or unwilling to maintain a relationship with another adult and forces the emotional role of a spouse onto their child instead. The child's needs are ignored, and instead the relationship exists solely to meet the needs of the parent, and the adult may not be aware of the problems created by their actions. The effects of covert incest are thought to mimic actual incest, though to a lesser degree, and Kenneth Adams, who originated the concept, describes the victims as having anger or guilt toward parents and problems with self-esteem, addiction, and sexual and emotional intimacy. Psychotherapist Ronnie Weisberg-Ross has noted that the term may not be particularly useful since it can lead to attributing nearly any possible dysfunctional relationship or problem becoming a catch-all, watered-down diagnosis. Ross also criticizes the term for its emphasis on children meeting parents' unmet needs, noting that children often meet the emotional or other needs of parents, with relationship boundaries frequently blurring and no definition of when this leads to permanent damage or harm. That's an end quote. I'm going on to my own words now. I would really like to break this down because child abuse actually is that prevalent. This was in 1980 that Kenneth Adams brought this to light. 1980. I was born in 1988. So 30 years ago. More than 30 years, but I'm not great at math. Just numerology. They threw out this concept, so the weeds kept germinating. Everywhere I look, I see this process. I see the causes and the results. Some cases are not as severe. However, even in the lack of severity, it plants a seed that becomes damaging to the next generation. That is why there is no definition of what leads to permanent damage and harm. Just like you can't see where the dandelion seed lands all the time, it still landed. It was discovered in 1980, but it even goes much further than that. I watched reels of psychiatric study in the 1960s of parents who enacted physical abuse to their children. And it is more likely that that child went on to abuse their child emotionally without knowing. They say it's not prevalent. However, I've found articles in other countries and cultures addressing it. It's now more than prevalent. It's now a way of life.